Hello, I'm Martha Castillo Rogers. Today is Thursday, March 4th, 1993, and we are in Houston, Texas, doing the Living Portrait Grandparents video interview with Joe Castillo. Welcome, Dad. We are so glad to have you today doing this interview. What is your full name?
My full name is Joe F. Castillo.
Is there anything special about your name?
Not that I know of.
Okay. What is your birth date and when were you born?
My birthday is February the 21st, 1925.
And where were you born?
I was born in Houston, Texas.
Okay. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have 2 brothers and 5 sisters.
Okay. And what are their names? Starting with the oldest down.
My sisters, the oldest sister is Lupe Castillo, and then Janie Castillo, and then Dolores.
Dolores. Well, Janie is Saldivar.
Saldivar.
And Dolores is Oligny.
Dolores Oligny.
And then that, oh yeah, and then...
And Francis.
And Tia Rosa.
And my sister Rosa.
Montes. And Francis...
Francis Lopez.
And then your brothers?
My brothers are, the youngest one is Catalino Castillo Jr. And then Ramon Castillo. And I don't think I know their ages.
Okay, and then you're firstborn of the boys.
No, I wasn't firstborn. I was the secondborn. The firstborn died.
Firstborn died.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what are your parents' names and when or where were they born?
My parents, my father's name was Catarino Castillo. My mother's name was Maria Mejia. They were married.
Or born? They were born?
Oh, they were born in Mexico. And they were married in Mexico.
Are they still living?
No, they have both died.
Is there anything else? I'm sorry. What were your parents' occupation?
My father was a laborer. My mother was a housewife.
Did you know your grandparents?
I only knew my grandmother on my mother's side, and not very well at that.
What do you remember about her? What can you tell us about her?
I was 5 years old when I saw her, and
you don't remember that?
I can't say very much because I don't remember that well.
Do you know the reason your family settled in Texas?
Because my father needed a job, and he came over and brought my mother, and he wanted to start a life here in the United States.
Is there anything else you can share about your family history that you might think of right now?
I don't think so.
Okay, now Dad, I'd like you to think back to the earliest thing you can remember. How old were you and what was going on?
When I saw my grandmother?
Just when, you as a young child, what is one thing that the earliest thing that you think you can remember? And what was going on?
I guess I was about 5 years old. I remember taking a picture in the front steps of my house, and I was barefooted. I had on a pair of striped pants, and I had a red handkerchief around my neck. That's all I can remember.
Are there any fond memories that you can think of before school years? Do you remember like playing or? Any particular thing?
I remember we had a bunch of ties, railroad ties, in front of our fence, and we used to use that as firewood, and we used to sit out there and play, and a lot of times my father would go out there and he would tell us some stories, and he would keep a bunch of kids really occupied. He used to tell good stories. That's all I can remember.
Where did you live when you were little, and what did your house look like?
I lived at number 38 Daly Street, D-A-L-Y. And I remember our house was just a old house with boards running up and down, and composition roof, and a wooden porch. And we didn't have no plumbing then. We had outside, we used to go outside to get our water. And that's what I can remember about it.
What do you remember about family celebrations like birthdays, holidays, or church gatherings?
The only thing I remember about birthdays was that Mama always used to make us a cake. And we used to have a meal. Mostly, she was a good cook. She would make mole and make it like a big feast, and we would eat plenty and invite neighbors and friends, and we'd have a good time.
Okay. What was the best Christmas gift that you can remember?
As a child?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think at that time we were too much in Christmas giving or nothing like that. We used to just go to church, and when we come out, we'd buy some cookies or things at the church, and we got home and eat them. And that's the only thing I remember.
Where did you go to elementary school, and about what year did you start?
I went to Jones Elementary School, and it must have been 1930 or 31.
Now, Dad, I'd like you to think back to an incident in grade school that you remember well. What was going on?
There would be junior high?
And elementary.
Elementary?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to know?
Some instant that you remember, in just any event or anything that might have been happening, and just tell us.
Well, I remember that I used to, at noon, I used to like to go out and ring the bell for the kids to go out for lunch. It was a bell like
the little,
with a handle, and it was made out of brass, and I would just take it and go all around the grounds there and ring it as I'd go just one time, and that was it. Everybody would go out, and when it was time to go in, I would get out the bell and ring it some more, and everybody would go in.
Do you remember any favorite teachers?
I don't think I remember any favorite teachers, but I remember one that I liked because I remember when I was in the 4th grade, I learned a poem. And it's a poem that's been real common.
Do you want to go ahead and say it?
Yeah, and the poem is by Henry Van Dyke. Mm-hmm. And it goes, it's fine to see the old world and travel up and down among the famous palaces and cities of renown, to admire the crumbling castles and the statues of the kings. But now I think I've had enough of antiquated things. So it's home again, and home again, America for me. My heart is turning home again, and there I long to be. In the land of youth and freedom, beyond the ocean bars, where the air is full of sunlight and the flag is full of stars. Now this poem is long. It's got 4 stanzas to it. And I think I know one more, but it's too long to say it, so I just won't at this time.
Do you remember your grades? How were your grades in school? And this is elementary still.
Well, I really don't remember much about my grades then, but I remember that I was passing.
Okay. How did you spend your summers during this elementary school time?
My summers, that's when we didn't go to school.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we never did go nowhere, so we had a big yard. We'd mostly go outside, and I had a lot of work to do. I would cut the burning wood, and I would help my mother plant a few seeds in the yard to make a little vegetable garden, and just a bunch of chores all around the house, and everything just went steady every day. It was the same thing.
Did you have any pets when you were little?
Any plants?
Pets.
No, I never did have no pets. Now, my mother used to grow chickens. We had a lot of chickens.
Oh, that's right.
And we had a cat and a dog around there, but they were not pets. They were just around, and they didn't belong to any particular body, but they were just there, and we didn't have them at home or nothing. They were always outside.
Were you happy as a young child?
Yeah, I imagine so.
What would you say about your relationship with your parents?
I would say it was a good relationship.
What moral lessons did they instill into your values?
Well, they always stressed that we would go to church and thank God for all the things that He gave us and provided, and thank for our parents, our brothers and sisters, and to try to do good always.
Where did you go to high school?
Jefferson Davis High School.
Did you go to, yeah. Did you, where did you live during this time?
At first, I lived at the same address, 38 Dallas Street. And then after I was in about the 10th grade, we moved. And we moved to 40.
What Guadalupe is that right now?
4038?
Yeah, sounds right.
4038 Lilia. And from there we used to walk. There was not much traffic. We had good sidewalks, and everything was clean, so we used to walk from there to school.
And you also went to Marshall Junior High?
Yes.
Before Davis?
Yes.
So you walked to Marshall, and then when you went to Davis?
When I was going to Marshall, I had a bicycle that I had bought, and I rode it there, and I would park it in one of these bicycle stands and lock it. When I'd get out, I'd take my bicycle home.
Okay. I'd like you to think back to an incident in high school that you remember well. What was going on?
In high school?
Junior high or senior high?
I only remember that we were excited about buying a ring for graduation. And finally, I scraped up enough money and bought my own ring. And I liked my ring, and after I graduated, I went looking for a job.
Okay. How were your grades in high school?
My grades were excellent for mathematics and English, but for geography and others, they were a little less, like B's and C's.
Did you graduate?
Yes.
What groups, social groups in school did you belong to, or what kind of kids did you associate with?
I never participated much in none of this because I was always working. I was working as soon as I'd get out of school. I would go and I'd work for 4 or 5 hours before I'd go home.
Who were your best friends during high school, and are you still in contact with any of them?
No, I don't have any contact with them at all.
Did you have some of them that worked with you?
Yeah, I've had 1 or 2, but later on they got married and they went on their own, and
what
I haven't
was their
heard
names?
from them.
Who were they?
I don't remember their names. I know that I used to see them, and then after they got married, I wouldn't see them anymore. So I didn't have much social time on account of I was working every day.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a favorite sport, and were you on any team?
Well, I had a lot of favorite sports like baseball and football, but I never participated in a team because, as I say, I was always working. I couldn't participate and practice with the teams in school.
Mm-hmm. How would you sum up your childhood, adolescence?
I really don't know, except that I used to do the best that I could. I used to help my parents in whatever I could do, chores and run errands and things, and always be handy around the house.
I would like to shift gears for a moment and ask you about World War I and the Great Depression of 1993. What impact, if any, did World War I have on your life or your family?
I didn't know much about World War I, so I can't tell you nothing about it.
You were about, or do you remember your parents saying anything about it? Or?
No.
Okay. What impact, if any, did the Depression have on your life or your family? And you were about 5 at that point.
The only thing I noticed was that money was hard to get, and that's one reason why I had to work from an early age.
Did you serve in the armed forces?
Yes.
When and under what circumstances?
I served, I was drafted into the service in 1943, and I served for 2.5 years, and I took my basic training, and I went overseas and fought in the Philippine Islands with the Japanese.
Okay. How old were you, and where and what were you doing during World War II?
When I first joined, I was 18, and I became 19 and 20, and a little past 20.
And you were at the Philippines?
What I was doing, I was in the war fighting, and I was a cavalryman, and we were fighting. There was a bunch of islands in the Philippines, and we would finish one campaign in one island, and we would mount some ships and go to another island, and we kept on going until we wiped out the Japanese that were fighting there.
Okay, and you were a sergeant in the war.
Yeah, during the time I was going through all this, I made sergeant on account of the time I worked it through the battle, and then later on I went into Japan to occupy it, and I wasn't there long because I had a lot of time in fighting, so I was able to come back home soon. And I witnessed the signing of the peace treaty in the battleship Missouri with General MacArthur, Hirohito, and all the Imperial Marines of the Japanese Army. And we witnessed this from a ship adjacent to it. And we, after they had signed the peace and everything, we dismounted and went down the streets, and we occupied Japan. And later on, I came back home, and they sent some replacements so that they could stay in there and burn up all the weapons that had been left around. They didn't want any weapons. Get rid of them, and I don't know how long after that it was all cleared out.
What impact did World War II have on your life?
I guess it had a great impact because as a result, I contracted malaria while I was there in the service, and when I was in the combat area. And evidently that had a physical effect on me. And up to now, I don't know what effect it would have had on my stroke that I've had lately, but I'm going through a lot of periods of forgetfulness, loss of memory, and all of this. And I believe that going through the service, and a lot of times we were under combat, real like infantry, being shot at us, and we were disorganized and we didn't know what to do. And I think those periods of time really can throw your mind off.
Yeah. When did you leave home? Under what circumstances, and where did you go?
The only time I went home, I left home, was when I went into the military service in 1943.
Okay.
And I went because I was drafted.
Where have you lived during your adult life?
I have lived in the same place where I lived before I left for the service, and I came back to 4037 Lilia.
With your parents?
With my parents. And then later on, I got married, and me and my wife left there, and we came and lived at 4018 Gano.
Okay.
Which after her death 10 years ago, I am still living there.
Okay, so this is after you graduated, and then you went to the service, and then you were still living with your parents.
Right.
And then you finally left home to get married. Okay. What was your first job after you left home?
My first job after I graduated and I was still living at home, I went to the Southern Pacific Railroad Company, and I got a job there.
And how long were you working there when you had to leave to go to the service?
I had been working there 6 months when I had to leave to go to the service.
And then after the service, you came back to the same job?
After the service, I came back to my old job, which was saved for me. And they gave me all the seniority that I had since I started working there. And therefore, now that I am retired, it totaled out to 46 years that I had worked for the company.
And did you enjoy this work? What was your title there and the type of work that you did?
My title work was diesel mechanic, and I enjoyed my work tremendously because it was a thing that I like to see, that
challenging.
It was challenging, and we'd get an engine down that was bad and dilapidated, and we would take it and tear it all down.
Okay, and this is the point where you took a course, and with that course is when you became a mechanic?
I took the course before I went before I took this job.
Okay.
I studied it first. That's why I was able to compete real well with all the
others that were there.
Yeah, with all the new work and everything that was coming along. So I think I did real well, and my favorite thing was that we would take those engines and break them all down and fix the parts and everything and put it back together. And the thrill was that once everything was put back together, you would go like stepping on a starter on a car, and the thing would crank up right away, and we'd run it for a while and check it out and see that everything was right, and then we'd release it to go into service.
And you also worked as a machinist there, and what is involved as a machinist there also had to do with working with blueprints. Didn't you do some of that too?
Yes. At one time, at the beginning, when I was taking my training, we took school. We studied drawings and blueprints and things like that, and that came along with the job. And being a machinist was the name that covers entirely a machinist, a mechanic, and everything that was there. Now that was a trade, and the other trade was a carman. That was like carpentry, like other small chores that they had to do.
What about your career have you found most satisfying? I guess, like you said, the challenging aspects.
I don't know if you call it a career. I just call it a job. I had a job there, and I enjoyed doing it. And I did it until I was unable to, on account of my physical condition, was unable to do it. Then what I did then was ordered some parts, and still was instructing some of the guys how to do the work. And I could do that, and I could order and deliver things and send them out, ship them out to different places.
Is there anything that you would have liked to have done differently?
I don't think so.
The last time you voted in a presidential election, whom did you vote for and why?
I voted for President Clinton, and I voted for him because I thought we needed a change, since the economy was so far down and everybody just kept on doing things the way previously done, and nobody would take anything. And because I can see that President Clinton wants to do things different, or at least make some kind of move or some kind of change, at least I'm willing to try that.
Are politics important to you?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, yes. For my wages and for my livelihood, yes.
What is your wife's full name, and how did you meet her?
Well, her name is Pauline. Her last name was Guerrero.
And how did y'all meet?
And I met her. She was a tailor working at a tailor shop in town. And I remember the first date we had. We went to town, and there was a restaurant called Once a Meal. And we would go there, and it was a novelty because they had one of these electric eyes, and the door would open, and we'd go in there and we'd order something to eat, and we'd have something to eat real fine. And I remember she liked strawberry shortcake.
Oh, yeah.
And I would like a toasted cheese sandwich. And we'd go in there and talk a while, and then from there we'd walk to the bus stop, and we would ride the bus about halfway, and then the rest of the way we would walk. And at that time there was not very many pavement down our way over there on off of Liberty Road. So we used to walk. A lot of times we'd get rained on and everything, and we'd still walk.
Okay. What was your courtship like?
Well, I think we had fun in the courtship. My wife was working, and I was working, so we didn't have too much time to go out anywhere much, but we used to walk a lot, We used to go to libraries. We used to go shopping a lot. And mostly just being together.
Mm-hmm. How long after you met did you get married?
Approximately 2 years.
Okay. How did this marriage end?
Well,
about 10 years ago.
10 years ago, my wife died.
Okay.
She had a a bad case of asthma.
Mm-hmm.
And she was still, when we went to the hospital, she was still looking good, but when she was there, she accumulated a lot of fluid in her lungs, and on account of this, she died.
What would you say is the most important thing about choosing a wife?
I think as long as you can get along with a person of the opposite sex, and you love each other's companies, and you belong to the same religion, and you are guided by your parents and everything. Your parents also belong to the same ideas and religion. I think that has a lot to do with a good marriage.
In what ways has marriage turned out to be different than you expected?
In a lot of ways, I think marriage turned out to be even better than what I expected. Because at first, even though we loved each other a lot, we really didn't know the amount of trust that we would have on each other. But now that all this time has passed, I became to know her well and everything, and I know that that it's a good thing. It's a good thing to always be in love and to help one another, and to try to bring your children, if you have any, in the right way.
When were your children born, and what are their names?
Well, I don't know if I can
Starting with the oldest.
Can name them, but James Castillo.
James Joseph.
He was born in May the 24th.
St. Joseph Hospital.
In St. Joseph Hospital in 1949. And Martha Ann Castillo, or Rogers now, she was born in May the 20th.
1950.
In 1950.
And also St. Joseph Hospital. We were all born in St. Joseph Hospital.
And then Raul Castillo. He was born also in St. Joseph Hospital, and he is 42?
He is 41.
41.
Born December 1st.
He was born December 1st.
1952.
1952. And then Lauren
Jo
Castillo. She was born in March the 18th, 1958. And
okay, I'd like you to think back to the day your first child was born. What was it like for you?
Well, first of all, I was nervous. And this was James, and he was so tiny that I was afraid to even touch him. But as soon as everyone in my family learned about it, they all started bringing all kinds of little gifts and dress things and everything, and they made him more popular. And for that reason, my wife used to dress him up real neat and everything, and make him look real nice.
What are some special memories of raising your children?
Memories?
Memories. Like holidays, and we used to go to church, and Mother used to dress us all up, and
Oh yeah. Well, I remember that my wife used to make clothes for herself and for the little girls, and dress them all alike and go to church and have a dress and a hat and things like that, especially for Easter.
Yeah.
And she used to have a lot of pride in doing this.
And we used to go to church, and people always used to make comment, there's the Castillo family. There were 6 in the family, and we used to take up the whole bench. And people used to always comment how that looked real nice.
Also, I remember she used to always tailor my pants and my coats and everything, and make them look.
Get them ready for the holiday.
Make them look better than regular clothes out of the store.
What is the best thing about children, and what is the most frustrating thing?
The best thing about children? Oh, the best thing about children was that wherever we'd go, we always try to go together and enjoy whatever we were visiting or looking at, or any historical things that we went by and everything. We would enjoy it better with all the children. And they put more spirit into life and make us do more things and make us want to go more places.
What was it like the first time you were a grandparent?
First time I was a grandparent.
This would be a PJ.
Well, it was great, and we wanted to have the first chance we could to go and visit him. And at that time, my son Raul was in the Air Force, and
it was kind of hard for us to go out there and visit.
We didn't go there to see him, did we? Or
I think Mother went, and then they finally came to visit us. But we did see him as a little bitty baby, and we all held him. And
I remember one time we went to see him wherever they were. I think they were still at the station.
Probably.
And they were living in a little house, and I remember PJ was starting to walk, and he was crazy about a football. And I was sitting in the sofa, and he was on a walker, and he rushed straight at me, and he wouldn't stop for nothing. He just bumped right against me, and he wouldn't get hurt or nothing. He used to. That was a lot of fun for him.
Baby.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and talk about the other grandchildren. Let's start with the oldest, James Castillo, and he's married to Betty. Betty is Betty Castro Castillo. And who are their children? Starting with the oldest.
No, the oldest is little Jimmy Castillo, and then there's Mark. And I think Mark is.
They're teenagers, Jimmy and Mark. And Michael is the third one. He's the youngest.
Yeah.
And I think he's about 10 years old. Okay, and then I'm next in line. I don't have any children.
Well, how about PJ? Are we already to say?
Okay, and then Roy comes in third. Roy Castillo, who is married to Yomeida Villanueva Castillo. And they have 2 children. And what are their names?
Paul Joseph Castillo is the first grandson.
Which was the first grandson.
And then Angela Castillo. Paul Joseph is about 20 now.
Yeah, he's about 20.
And Angela is
close
17.
to little Jimmy's age, which is about 16 or 17.
She's about 17.
Now, Dad, I would like to move to a different subject area, that of your interest. Do you enjoy travel, and where have you gone?
I enjoyed travel when I was able to travel. Now, since my stroke, I don't want to go anywhere.
And what are some of the places that we've been to?
some of the places that we've been through as a family. We went to Mexico about 3 times, and since I worked for the railroad, I had a free pass which would pay for half of the fare. Now, therefore, that's the only way we did travel, since everybody could go in the coaches, and the kids would just roam around the coaches and everything.
And in traveling in the train, we would sightsee the mountains through the windows.
And they would sing or whatever, and cut up and buy different things that they wanted to, and all of that. And altogether, we had a lot of fun. And we went to Disneyland a couple of times, and we went through there, and we just had a lot of fun being together.
Okay.
I remember Roy one time, he was watching this little rabbit coming along, and saw the big belly.
Mickey Mouse or somebody.
And he rushed over there and punched it right in the belly. And I had to stop him because I think it was a girl. I said, "Hey, Roy, you're going to hurt somebody."
Okay. What organizations do you belong to? Any church organizations?
Right now, I just belong to St. Patrick Church, and I belong to the Young at Heart group, which is a society for the senior citizens, and that's about all I'm able to attend. And we have a dinner twice a month, and we all gather and talk, and we share our dishes or whatever, and we have a good time.
Okay. Okay, and what kind of interests do you have or hobbies?
Well, I don't have any much of that now. All I do is the interest that I have is to try to keep up my yard and my plants, and
you have herbs planted right now, don't you?
Yes, and I want to read whatever I can when I have time and when I feel well. And
you have had carpentry as a hobby. You used to do a lot of little furniture pieces around the house.
Yes, but I don't do that no more because I can't even handle a saw anymore.
And you even built onto the house. Yeah. Built rooms onto.
I did when I could. I haven't got that hobby now. I can't do it.
Okay, I would like you to take stock for a moment. At this point in time, has your life turned out as you imagined that it would?
Well, in the first place, I never imagined my life would be in any kind of way. I just went along with what my parents taught me, that I should believe in God and trust in Him to guide me to whatever life He had for me, and that's it.
What has been your greatest accomplishment so far?
I don't know what accomplishment. I think the greatest accomplishment would be that I learned this trade to be a machinist, and that I carried it through until I retired. And I enjoyed every time that I was there and doing the work that I was doing.
What is the most important thing in your life right now?
Right now, the most important thing in my life would be to be feeling well, to be able to walk and talk and do at least normal things. Because I've had this stroke, and there's a lot of things that I am hindered from doing.
What would you have done differently in your life if you knew then what you know now?
I don't think there's anything I would have done different.
Okay. What are your goals right now, and what do you hope to accomplish next?
My goal right now is to try to find me a vehicle that I can drive and go about my life, so I can at least do a little shopping and go to a few little places that I like, to see the doctor and to go to church and to go shopping, those kind of little things. And that's my main objective now.
Okay, what are the most important things you have learned about life so far?
The most important things I've learned about life is that treat it right and it will treat you right.
What role does religion play in your life?
Religion right now, it plays a big part in my life. Since I'm going through these things, I'm trying to look up to the Lord and for help and for forgiveness for my sins, so that He will give me life, so that I can continue to be on my own, and so that I can at least do the minimum things that I am not able to do right now.
Who has influenced you most in your spiritual life?
I think my father influenced me more in my religion, because he was a very religious man. He used to read the Bible a lot, and he used to quote a lot of the Bible, and he used to have me to read some parts in the Bible, and to my erroneous thinking, I would just hurry through the reading. I'd read it and get out of there. His Bible was in Spanish, and I really wasn't too good in reading Spanish.
Okay, Dad, we are nearing the end of the interview. The next part is the advice you have for your future generations of your family. First, what advice would you have for your great-grandchildren in the area of getting an education?
The advice that I would give them would be to try to learn everything that is taught them in school, and try to pass it on to their friends, and to really get into it deeply, where they can become some kind of a person, so that they can have a
good career,
a good
career, job, or good
life.
A
good job, a good life with their family.
What advice do you have about money?
About money is to make money in a honest way, work for it, and save all you can, but don't spend it wildly.
What about love and marriage?
I think love is a wonderful thing, and love is there even if you're married or not. So if you do get married, make that love grow among you and your wife and the children, and teach them the good values and the morals of life.
How should they raise their children?
I think that everyone has gone apart from the Bible and from God, and I think that as long as they follow His commandments and raise the children under a religious environment, and so they can help them go to church and pray to God, thank Him for all the things in their lives that they've gotten.
Okay, Dad. Okay, Dad. Probably all of the future generations of your family will watch this tape. Since you have the opportunity right now, what personal message would you like to give them? And take as much time as you need.
Well, I would think that as long as you all believe in God and practice a good religious life and try to do what's right and teach your children right things and morals, I think that we can get back to being a good world.
We are at the end of the interview. Is there anything you would like to add or to say to complete things? And please take as much time as you need.
The only thing I'd like to say is I'd like to say the second stanza of that poem.
Okay.
I like the German firewood in green battalion drill, and I like the gardens of Versailles with flashing fountains fill. But oh, to take your hand, my dear, and ramble for a night in the friendly western woodland where nature has its way.
Thank you, Dad. This concludes our interview for today. Good day.